Today, it is no longer a secret that the textile industry is one of the most highly polluting in the world. Production of textiles for fashion buyers contributes to 10% of global carbon emission, depletes water resources, and 85% of textiles go to waste each year. Recent technological developments by private players allow alternative sustainable textile fibers to be processed more efficiently on newer, custom-made, patented equipment. To learn more about these latest developments, we have today with us Shreyans Kokra, founder of CEO of Canvaloop Fibre, an Indian materials science company that converts hemp and other agricultural waste into durable textile fiber and yarn for global garment manufacturers. Also with us today, we have Priya Shah, general partner of Theia Ventures. She will moderate the session today. Theia Ventures' mandate is to invest in pre-seed and seed stage startups in India with a climate lens. Before we start, I want to inform you that this session is being recorded. You might have heard it just before. We will share the link of the recording with you after the event in a follow-up email, which you're welcome to share with your network or colleagues that might be interested in the content shared today. This is an informal network and conversation, so please, as always, we welcome your thoughts, your ideas, comments after the presentation in the dedicated Q&A slot later on. You can use the chat field to share your questions so we can see what questions are there, and we'll do our best to cover all of them in the Q&A session. And now, with no further ado, over to you, Priya.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. And thank you to all of you for joining this morning. Particularly thank you to the Artha Impact team and Rianta Capital team for hosting us today on this Impact for Breakfast panel. We're so looking forward to an interesting and knowledge-building session where we hope to also make it interactive through the Q&A session after the main panel. I thought we could start by giving a little bit of background on us and why we chose this topic. I'm the general partner at Theia Ventures, as Debbie mentioned, which is a pre-seed and seed stage investment fund based in India and investing in companies across the climate tech spectrum, renewables, energy efficiency, mobility, battery tech, biofuels, climate smart agriculture, and urban waste management. We've been tracking the alternative materials space closely, and we were quite encouraged to see a lot of activity in the Indian ecosystem, and sustainable textiles was one of them. As many of you know, the Indian textile and apparel space is not only one of the oldest industries in the Indian economy, but also one of the largest sectors in terms of output, employment, and foreign exchange earnings via exports. It provides direct employment to over 45 million people, making it the second largest provider of employment after agriculture sector in India. However, as Debbie also mentioned, textile industry is one of the highest polluting in the world. And this is mainly due to plastic-based and synthetic fibers, which are challenging to biodegrade and recycle, such as polyester, nylon, and acrylic, and also cellulose-based fibers like cotton, which use up large amounts of water and pesticides in the agricultural process. So as a result of this, there's actually a rise in sustainable fiber alternatives with similar properties to cotton, such as hemp, nettles, linen, viscose, lyocell, lotus stem, and agricultural waste, which are very strong alternatives for the textile industry and much more durable. Canvaloop Fibre is one of these players who has adapted the use case of traditional textile materials and aims to make sustainable textiles mainstream through their technology innovation, which converts agriculture waste fiber into textile fiber and yarn and sells it to global garment manufacturers, which is a very important part of the circular economy. So to start, I'd be very interested to hear from you, Shreyans. What motivated you to start Canvaloop and enter this sustainable textile space? And how do you think about the gap in the market and the potential opportunities that your business can create?
So it's actually not very planned for me to get into the sustainable textile space. Like my basic education is in finance. I have all my adulthood, I did study finance, right? And for the final masters, I went to the US to get a master's in entrepreneurship, and the clear plan was to launch a fintech venture after that, right? But when we went to the US, right, for the first time, I was exposed to the concept of pollution in textiles, right? Although my family is a textile based family, we have 4 generations of my family have been into textile manufacturing. We process more than 4 million meters of cloth each month, right? But even though being from a textile family and living in a city in Surat in India, which is a synthetic textile hub, I never knew the amount of pollution or the amount of environmental impact that synthetic materials and even cotton have on the environment. And just that exposure there actually motivated me and the team to actually look for alternate solutions, because we need to substitute the basic raw materials in the industry. We do not. I think the time has gone to improve the existing materials slightly, make them slightly more biodegradable or less water consuming. I think the time is right to reinvent the basic raw materials of the industry, and that is what motivated us back in 2016-17 to look for solutions that could replace the existing materials in the industry. Yes.
Great. And just a follow-up question to that, when you're creating these materials, what is the exact kind of material science processes that are needed, which you've installed in your factory operations? And can you explain a little bit the process of converting that agricultural waste into fiber and yarn? I mean, which fibers do you use? What do you actually need to procure from the field?
So the technology actually works across all kinds of agriculture waste with a bast component, right? So in our words, we call it bast fibers, right? So it can be anything right across from hemp, linen, banana, pineapple, nettle. So all of these crops are bast crops, meaning that they have some fibrous content in either their leaves or their stem. So the technology works across all of them. We have been successfully able to commercialize at the moment hemp and banana fibers. Pineapple is in the works. I'll just like to show you a small screen share. Yeah, I think so. This is how, say, this is on the left. If you can see on the screen, right? This is how the banana stems are discarded after the banana is plucked from the crop. So we take over the leftover stems. Similarly, on the right, after the buds and the leaves of the hemp plant are used for oil seed or other medicinal purposes, the stalk is usually left as biomass or used for very low value purposes. So we utilize these agriculture waste, right, and have our own proprietary process to convert them into a structure which is cotton like. Why is that so important is because that makes these materials compatible with current infrastructure, right? So if some fashion brand or textile manufacturer wants to start using more sustainable agro waste based materials, they do not have to incur any sort of capital expenditure. They do not have to train their employees or their systems or modify their machinery on any kind. It works all across the system seamlessly without requiring any sort of modification. And that is what our primary aim is. When we look at mainstreaming sustainability, we want to make the adoption as seamless, as smooth, and as easy as possible, right? So if someone wants to start using these materials, it should not be a hassle for them, either financially or with respect to training or any other purposes. This is what we do in-house at our factory using our custom-made equipment. All kinds of agro waste, as I mentioned before, can be converted to a cotton-like structure. And post it's converted to a cotton-like structure on the current existing machinery, it can be converted to blended yarns and subsequently to anything and everything we can think of in textiles, right? Right from the shirt I'm wearing to the bed sheet I'm sitting on to the curtains there are on in this room, right? So everything that we can think of in the world of textiles can be then made using these fibers. So yeah, this is basically what we're doing.
Great. And what do you think the market looks like? So you mentioned fiber and yarn. You also mentioned your finished product, which is denim jeans. So who are you actually catering to? I mean, how does your business model work? And what do you think are the big drivers with consumers, end consumers, but also global garment manufacturer and brands like Levi's, H&M? Some of them I know that you're working with as well.
So when we initially started, right, in 2017, it was a very different space than what it is today, right? We were actually educating the brands, the manufacturers with regards to sustainable materials, and it was a pretty difficult journey. But I think COVID has given sustainability, especially in the fashion industry, a huge push. There is a rising consumer awareness with uh, a rising demand for truly sustainable offerings, right? So that has actually pushed fashion brands and manufacturers to look for sustainable fashion solutions. So from the demand side, we see it increasing exponentially every quarter. We have brands which we thought were value brands and not premium brands interested in selling uh, say sustainable products because they are almost always considered to be premium, right, as compared to value offerings. But now we see value brands such as H&M, Zara riding the sustainability wave and trying to at least come up with capsule collections which focus on sustainability. So that is with regards to the demand side. With regards to supply, right, the technology that we have is very modular and simple, right? So it's easy to scale up. There is no doubt that there is abundant agricultural waste across the globe that needs to be processed into high value offerings. So, for example, although our current manufacturing is in India, we actually import a lot of agriculture waste from Europe, started to do so from Australia. Uh, we are in talks with like having a small facility in the US itself, owing to the high cultivation of oilseed hemp in US, and the biomass just goes to waste. So there is global potential in terms of supply as well. And with demand, I think within the next 10 years, every wardrobe would be at least 50% sustainable. So the demand's always rising, and we just need to ride the wave.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I just have one or two more questions before we open it up towards Q&A, since I think we have a few more minutes. So you mentioned hemp, and your
Yes.
Canvaloop specific, focus on hemp. So what made you choose this particular sort of agricultural product? What does the journey for hemp look like in different markets? You're operating in India. My understanding is it's, has been quite regulated in India, but by contrast in the US and parts of Europe, hemp is a huge market. So could you give us a bit of understanding on the textile market for hemp, and then also maybe some of the broader use cases, like you mentioned, oil seed and medicinal purposes and other areas, and why it's such a growing opportunity for you?
Yeah, so unfortunately, like hemp got regulated along with marijuana because they belong to the same species of plants, right, in the 1960s. And thus the textile consumption for the crop decreased drastically. All the modern innovations that happened in textiles were with regards to either cotton or synthetic materials, and hemp sort of lost its way. So when in 2010s the US started to actually deregulate hemp, make a clear distinction between hemp and marijuana, naturally the other parts of the globe followed, and suddenly there was a boom in supply with regards to cultivation of hemp in oilseed, in CBD, other medicinal purposes. But there was still very less work done on the textile front because, again, the lack of technology being one of the major reasons, right? Companies are very reluctant to have a new manufacturing line just to use hemp, right? And that is where we come in, trying to make hemp into such a structure that it can run on the current machineries, and also the final feel of the product is different and better than what we are currently wearing. So it's not coarse, it's not sticky to wear to your skin. So that is how the journey of hemp has been. I think it's getting deregulated. In most parts of Europe, it's already deregulated because there is a clear distinction between hemp and marijuana in Europe. In India, in other Asian markets, except for China, of course, the deregulation is still in progress. I would give it another 3 to 4 years before we see commercial cultivation of hemp happening in India or Bangladesh or even other parts of Asia. But with regards to Europe, as we source most of our oilseed hemp from Europe, so we know that there is abundant supply there. Plus, there is an infrastructure to collect the biomass, to sort, to clean. So I think that in those respects, Europe is pretty advanced. Australia is again catching up. US is catching up with regards to the infrastructure of collecting, baling, harvesting hemp. So yeah, all in all, a very positive note both in terms of supply and in terms of uh, the awareness with regards to hemp. See, there are a lot of sustainable fibers in the market. We have organic cotton, we have recycled polyester, right? But all of these would have certain amount of environmental footprint. When it comes to hemp, as far as we know, right, it has the lowest carbon footprint among all textile fibers. Uh, because of the way it's cultivated, it does not require any human input for cultivation. So that makes it stand out from the crowd of other sustainable fibers. And yeah, we think it's going to be a huge part of everyone's wardrobe in a very short time.
Great. Thanks, Shreyans. And do you, as Canvaloop, foresee any opportunities for you yourself to actually expand your operations outside India? So right now you have, your factory based in Surat, as you mentioned, in Gujarat. But do you see that, with the US market growing rapidly, any sort of partnerships or abilities to kind of be present in the US as a supplier, not just, someone who exports your products?
Yes, definitely. I think other markets are coming up, especially when it's relation to hemp, right? The US specifically, we see some companies specifically growing hemp for textile purposes in the US, and we are in talks with them to actually expand our operations in US, like having the conversion facility next to the fields, so that the carbon footprint, because it also involves a portion of transport, right? So when we do away with that, we also save on a lot of carbon footprint. So we are working on that as well. Similarly, in Australia, there is already a lot of hemp cultivation happening, and it's primarily for CBD purposes. So we can use the leftover biomass. We are in talks with one of the largest cultivators in Australia to again have our sort of facility installed there on a joint venture basis. Yeah, so as I think both the cultivation and the market demand grows, we would have a global footprint pretty soon.
Great. Okay, final question just from my side, and then over to you, Debbie, to see if we have any questions from the audience. So, as you mentioned, there's so many global brands out there, with some of which you're working with, Levi's, H&M, Patagonia, and others that are very, very interested in the sustainable textiles, sector, and creating their own finished product lines that are mainstreaming and out to Gen Zs and millennials, that are actively purchasing and taking those conscious decisions to buy those types of textiles, whether it's linen, hemp, banana fiber, etc. So within India, then, there are a few corporates that are quite large that are kind of really pushing on this. There's Birla Cellulose, there's Arvind Limited, and a few others. How do you see the kind of momentum growing within India on the sustainable textiles piece? And do you think these large corporates can really push the agenda and help to kind of convince Indian consumers to move towards a sustainable alternative, even if there is slightly higher prices to begin with?
So there are two things here, right? Traditionally, like when you look at textile manufacturing companies, they would do what the market tells them to do, right? So very rarely do we see some companies actually trying to push anything into the market. It is mostly going to be what the market demands, and they produce in the best manner possible. But the other thing is, right, within India itself, there is a rising awareness with regards to sustainability and sustainability in fashion specifically, right? For example, just last month, right, did a small session on sustainability with class 9 students in the school I studied, right? And I remember when I was in class 9, I had absolutely no clue what sustainability is, right? And what does the term mean, and what choices do I make to live a more sustainable life. But when you look at class 9 students currently, they know what sustainability is. They can differentiate between a sustainable and a non-sustainable product. And surprisingly, they knew the meaning of the term greenwashing, right? Which is which actually took me by surprise. So I think the consumer awareness is what will compel these large scale manufacturers to actually shift to more sustainable offerings, and they are doing so as well. Again, but there are exceptions. Someone like an Arvind Limited, which have been pioneers in sustainability for a very long time, and they are one of the first to adopt new technologies for a more sustainable manufacturing process. Yes, so we see them pushing those producers to global brands, and also within the Indian ecosystem, we see the consumer awareness rising very fast.
Great. Thank you so much, Shreyans, for that very informative session and really sort of well thought out answers. Really interesting to hear about the work Canvaloop Fibre is doing. So over to you, Debbie, on any sort of questions that the audience has, which they can ask either one of us.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Shreyans, for the insightful presentation. Before I jump into the questions of the audience, I have one. Hemp sounds like it's the solution to the problems we have with the textile industry. Why would you say, what is the main reason why not everyone that is working in textile is jumping onto hemp and using it as a product as a sustainable product for their production?
Two reasons. Primarily, first is the current price point, which is significantly higher, right? So when you look at the raw hemp fiber prices at the moment, these would be around 4 times that of cotton, which is significantly a deterrent in the adoption. Secondly, is again there is no technology present at scale, right? So people want to adopt hemp, but the final fabric that we get, the final product that we get, a piece of shirt or a jeans, should be soft to the skin. The consumer must like to wear it every day, right? So that quality of hemp again is in short supply, and that is where we come in to make hemp soft and spinnable on the current textile systems. So these are, I think, the two primary reasons. One is the price point, and second is the lack of general availability of the material.
Thank you. Barbara has a question. Barbara, do you want to share your question yourself to Shreyans?
Yes, I can do that. Yeah, maybe I missed it out in the beginning. I just was curious, what again is the technology you're using to convert the waste, as you explained before, into that yarn fibers?
So it's basically a 3-step process, right, which involves a biochemical treatment, which makes the
like solvents. When you say biochemical,
no, we do not. No, so when we use solvents, we kind of regenerate the fiber, but we are not doing that. So our process actually retains all the natural qualities of the agriculture waste. So if we make a banana fiber, we call it Canvaloop, it will have all the qualities what the banana plant has. It will be antifungal, it will be anti-UV, it will be porous, right? So because we are not regenerating the fiber, that would again, I think, not make it sustainable. It's a I think Paolo here has a question. Is it in the chat box?
Paolo, would you have a question you'd like to ask? I think we're not able to view it in the chat box.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah. Yes,
hi.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, hi, Shreyans. Yes, thank you for your presentation. Have you considered to make fiber out of out of rice, out of the rice leftovers?
You mean the husk or the paddy straw?
Well, whatever has got more fiber in it, because I mean I know India produces a lot of rice, and it would be interesting to know whether you would be able to do that.
So husk, we technically cannot produce a fiber because it has very less cellulose content.
Mm,
But with regards to the paddy, yes, we have done some trials. We have made some fibers. We're not yet commercially producing it
mm,
because again, the market demand and the supply constraint.
mm.
But otherwise, yes, the tech works on it, and it is possible to convert the paddy straw into textile grade fibers.
Because the issue we have with hemp, obviously it depends on the kind of material you have to produce. We produce fantasy yarns for especially for women's clothing, and as you know, hemp as in terms of quality is a bit kind of robust as a fiber and material, and we don't tend to use it. So my next question would be, for instance, do you make cotton out of the fibers that you recycle?
I still did not get you. Like, do we make cotton out of?
Out of the leftovers, out of out of the plants that you recycle, do you make
Yeah.
cotton?
So it's not exactly cotton. Like,
Mm,
so the fiber when we use oilseed hemp or when we use say discarded banana stems,
mm,
these would be banana and hemp fibers only.
mm,
But their structure would be similar to cotton,
mm,
so that like as you said, when the consumer wears it, it will not feel different or harsh on the skin,
mm.
and on it will run on your existing machineries.
Okay.
So yeah, but it'll be cotton like, it will not be cotton.
Okay, so and do you have like any certifications like GOTS certifications or or GRS certifications?
Yes, we are working on the GRS. We
Okay.
have also applied for the Oikotex. We'll be getting it shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, GRS is something that we will all be that is on in our plans. We will be getting it within this year, and
Mm-hmm.
also like a full traceability of where our fiber is coming from, where the raw material is being sourced. The whole journey we would probably be able to give it to you very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paolo.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Shreyans. We have one more question from William. William, would you like to share your question?
Yeah, in fact, I had a few. Thanks for your presentation. It was great. How does your product compare to linen? Because in
Yeah.
France, for instance, they've been producing bio-linen for donkey years, and
Yeah.
so does your product have a competitive advantage? Then on your website, there are two things that sprung to mind. Is you've got this slow brand. So are you a B2B company or are you a B2C company? And then you make a distinction between hemp and stinging nettle. I had no idea what stinging nettle was, so I just looked it up. Can you sort of explain, what are the merits, the benefits? But where I would be interested is to understand if there is a price benefit to your product compared to other products, and if it can stand on its own legs on price wise also.
Yeah. So I'll give you first the hemp and linen comparison, right? When you look at virgin hemp and linen, both when is cultivated for the fiber purposes, I think they would have pretty similar carbon footprints from a sustainability point of view, and also from say the performance point of view. Hemp would be slightly superior to linen. So linen is antimicrobial, but hemp has a better antimicrobial index than linen. Similarly, with the porous nature, hemp is slightly more porous than linen, more anti-UV than linen. Uh, the major distinction that we bring in is we use, as I said, oilseed hemp, right? So hemp, which is not actually cultivated for textiles, but cultivated for other purposes like medicine or oil, and we use the leftover biomass. So our carbon footprint is definitely significantly less. And secondly, that also gives us a price advantage because our raw material is significantly cheaper than the other market players. So this is actually what differentiates us from linen. Uh, I also gave you the price answer. Secondly, we are primarily a B2B company, right? We supply fibers and yarn to textile mills and fashion brands. D2C that we launched was for specifically one kind of hemp, which is the wild growing hemp in the Himalayan region in India. And that is a small section of D2C that we do just to showcase the amount of opportunities, the kind of products that can be made using our produce. But we are primarily a B2B company. Is there anything I missed, William? Because there were a lot of questions. I might have missed something.
No, thanks for your answers. The last one was explaining what stinging nettle was.
So stinging nettle is again a wild growing crop in India. So when you go to any northern Indian states, you'll find this grows in the wild in elevations more than 1,000 meters. Again, this was traditionally used as a silk replacement because it's like a very soft and silky fiber. So that is what stinging nettle is. So it has nothing to do with hemp. It's one of the other products that we make.
Does that answer your question, William?
Yeah, that was perfect. Although it doesn't seem very cheap, man. You've got to go high and you've got to ask indigenous
So
people.
nettle is definitely a very expensive fiber, but like it's used as a silk replacement, so it's cheaper than silk. So if you compare it with the thing it is replacing, it's cheaper. But if you compare it with cotton, it's bonkers. Like it's like 10 times more expensive than cotton. So, but still cheaper than silk, what we are trying to replace. So.
Thank you. Barbara, do you have a question? I just saw you muted your microphone. If you do, please give us a shout. I have one question, Shreyans. You mentioned that you looking to expanding into the US and to Australia. So what partners are you looking for to do so, and what is needed at your end so you can expand with Canvaloop fibers into other continents?
So we are primarily looking at cultivators of the crop, right? Companies who are cultivating hemp on a large scale, and we can add value to their cultivation using our technology, directly supplying to the textile industries and the fashion brands there. We the One of the reasons of doing this is there is this rising trend of made in the same country as it is sold, right? So a made in America hemp shirt would be seen as a much better alternative than a made in India hemp shirt sold in the US, right? So I also understand there are infrastructure challenges because primarily the textile manufacturing happens in a cluster of Asian countries. But there is an opportunity of doing that at the source as well. So that is what we're looking at cultivators, any sort of other collaborators, fashion companies looking to use hemp or any other agro waste based materials. Yeah, that's what we are primarily looking at. But we are open as a company in any sorts of collaborations. We always believe that collaboration is better than the competition because the ultimate goal for everyone in the sustainability space is one.
Thank you. And those jeans that we can see on your website, where can one buy those?
Till now, you can buy it still on Indiegogo, right? But I would suggest like if you could wait for around 15 days, we would be getting our D2C website live, and we'll be along with the jeans, we'll have yoga mats for you to buy. These would be completely made out of the wild growing hemp in the Himalayas. So again, grown without any human input and processed in the most sustainable manner possible.
And these the jeans are custom made. Is that correct?
Please feel free to ask directly or.
I'm sorry, I just got disconnected. Can you hear me now?
I joined late because I was at another session, but this is Vidya. I'm from Theia Ventures. Shreyans, it might have already been covered earlier, but I just wanted to get a sense of, it's proprietary technology. So have you secured your IP, your patents as yet? And, how have you been funded in your journey so far?
So firstly, it's a proprietary tech. We have applied for a patent. We should be getting it pretty soon. We were bootstrapped, funded by ourselves till very recently. We are currently closing a round of funding from a couple of marquee investors in India. We'll be making that announcement soon. But we have been commercially active for the past 18 months with good quarter-on-quarter growth. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my internet connection. It doesn't happen always in India. It also happens in Switzerland, as you see. Barbara had a question regarding the slides. We'll be sharing contact details and slides after the session. Are there any final questions from the audience that you would like to share with Shreyans? You will have the possibility to follow up with him afterwards, and with Priya. I'll be sharing the details. I'll be sharing the recording with all of you, and so you can follow up with them directly. If there are no additional questions,
I have, Debbie,
go
sorry,
ahead,
I have
Priya.
one question from my end I thought would help the rest of the audience just to understand a little bit more. So Shreyans, you mentioned the Himalayan region in India and sort of some of the farmers that you're procuring this waste from. So what are some of the sort of social impact benefits of engaging with this target segment? How does Canvaloop play any role in kind of that poverty upliftment, or sort of how are you actually engaging here?
So one of the major problems in the upper hills of India is the lack of employment, right? And that is when people from the hills start to migrate to the lower hills and subsequently to metro cities such as Delhi, right? And the lack of employment can be solved majorly by using local produce, right? So for example, hemp, stinging nettle, these crops grow in abundant in the wild in these regions. What we have done is through cooperative organizations, we have formed farmer clusters in those regions. It give year-long employment to those individuals in the specific areas, and they help us collect the wild growing hemp and stinging nettle, which would be subsequently converted to textile grade fibers at our unit. One more thing I would like to mention here is although we are harvesting and cultivating it every 3 months, it's nature's bounty. So it grows back to its complete form in less than 90 days, right? So it's an abundant resource which nature has given in the upper hills of the Indian subcontinent, right across India, Nepal, Bhutan. And we definitely think if there are village clusters modeled around some sort of cultivation of these native crops, these would redefine how the hill economy works. And we, through our partner organizations, are helping as much as we can to actually come up with like a scalable model, right? So along with ERB Textiles, for example, we have this small sort of village cluster in a cluster will be like 20 individuals, every one, and 20 individuals forming a small cluster and going around collecting the wild growing hemp. They would be connected to another group of 20, and then we have a small machine within 3 or 4 clusters that helps to reduce their task and eventually get the produce to us. So yes, we have currently touched about 400 individuals across, that's around 400 families in the upper hills of Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Nepal.
Great, thank you. That's very impressive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ashwarya has a question. Do you want to ask the question yourself, Ashwarya? I can also.
It's in the chat box. I'll just go ahead and answer it.
I can read it out loud so the other participants know what the question is. He's asking how you are sourcing the agro waste and the hemp.
Yes. Firstly, dividing the agro waste into hemp and non-hemp. Hemp, again, 2 ways. One is the wild growth which is happening in the higher Indian subcontinent. And second is producers of oilseed hemp across Europe, US, and Australia. Secondly, non-hemp waste such as banana and pineapple, we are sourcing it very locally. So it comes, I'm situated in South Gujarat, so it comes from South Gujarat, Maharashtra, all of the states below us. So within 400-kilometer radius of where we are located, we are sourcing other agriculture waste.
Thank you, Shreyans.
I'm sorry, I just realized that there is the major participation is from non-Indian origin. So just to put it simply, we are sourcing around the cultivation which is happening around our factory. So it's within a 400-kilometer radius of where we are located.
Thank you, Shreyans.
Thank you,
Great.
Ravi.
If there are no additional questions, Priya, Shreyans, do you have any final comments you would like to share with us?
So from my end, I just wanted to thank everyone for participating today. Very interesting questions from the audience, and sort of good to see everybody's kind of interest in the space. As we know, it's growing quite rapidly, and not only just in textiles, but also, as Shreyans mentioned, other applications, yoga mats, sort of linens and bedspreads, and footwear as well. So there's a lot of different applications for sustainable materials in this value chain, and I think it'll be interesting for us to all sort of stay abreast of all the new developments, especially coming from young companies like Canvaloop, but also from major corporate houses and other innovators in the market. So we're looking forward to seeing a lot more interesting and sort of groundbreaking sort of innovations just like this coming up. And thank you all for your time and attention today.
Yeah, I think thank you, everyone. It's been a great session. Anything that you would like to discuss on sustainability does not necessarily have to be with respect to Canvaloop. You can always ping us up either on LinkedIn, write us an email, anything. We would be happy to discuss, talk it out, and take this journey forward. Thank you.
Would you exchange contact details, Deborah, at the end of the session?
Yes, I am. Yeah, yes, I'm going to share these.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from my side as well, especially to Priya and Shreyans for this very informative presentation. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have, again, additional questions, comments you would like to do, as I said, I'll be sharing the contact details also of Priya. If you have any questions about Theia Ventures, I'll be sharing all of these with a link to the recording in the follow-up note I'll be sharing later today. And please don't hesitate to share that recording with everyone you know and connect Canvaloop and Shreyans with the right people so they can further expand and thrive. Thank you all for coming and joining us virtually. I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Priya.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.